And I asked John if I could talk to you guys for the next 4 weeks. And I wanted to talk to you guys about something that on the surface seems pretty benign, right? So we're going to talk about shame for the next 4 weeks, okay? And how it affects our behaviors and why we have it in our lives and why it may or may not be healthy, okay? So, again, welcome back. So the title of this is Shameless, okay? So we're going to try to walk you through the next 4 weeks on how to experience a life with less shame, okay? How many of you guys like the feeling of shame? How many of you guys understand the feeling of shame? All right, never mind. Everybody's perfect in here, so we're all done. Thanks, guys. There we go. Now we got some honest people. All right, hands are up. Okay, so shame. Everybody feels shame, right? I said, how many understand? All right, so nobody likes the feeling of shame, right? Okay, good. How many of you understand the feeling of shame? Okay, there you go. Okay, miscommunication. So, you're going to have to bear with me on this. This has been kind of on my heart, and I've been thinking about it and praying about it. And it's really only in the last couple days that it's really kind of all come together. So, whatever I say tonight is really kind of the Holy Spirit, because I really haven't prepared. I haven't practiced this. Let's put it that way. I've prepared a lot. I haven't practiced. So, next slide, please. This is the hard part for me. Is not being in control of my slides. So where are we going? Okay, introduction to shame. This week I'm going to be talking to you, introducing you to it. I'm going to introduce you to a historical figure, one of Jesus' disciples, Peter. Okay, and we're going to walk kind of through Peter's life and how he kind of had some shame issues, or could have had some shame issues in his life, and kind of how Jesus walked him through that. Next week, we'll have a special guest speaker, Bobby Jover. You might notice for the last name, he may or may not be related to me. I'll confess to that after you hear him. If you like him, he's my brother. If you don't like him, I don't know who the guy is. Okay? The second special guest speaker, Bobby's going to be talking about engaging in community and how engaging in community around us helps us with that shame. It's one of our tools that we'll introduce you to and that you guys can use to fight that shame piece in our lives, okay? In the third week, Sarah Petit. Some of you may know her as Ethan and Drake's mom. And she will be talking to you week 3 about engaging with the Holy Spirit and using the Holy Spirit and then engaging in the Holy Spirit as a tool to fight shame. And then week 4, we'll have a not so special guest here to hear me again. Wrap it up and talk about the restoration of Christ and how Christ restored Peter and brought him back into relationship and kind of wiped his shame away, okay? So, that being said, that's where we're going, okay? Next slide. Where are we now? Okay? As I look around, so as you guys don't know, I have a high schooler, I have a middle schooler, I have a 4th grader, I have a 1st grader, and a kindergartner, okay? So I have 5 kids kind of running the range of children, right? I'm not that old. I've only been out of school for about 18 years now, so she laughed. She's like, oh my God, what's so? I'm not terribly old. I don't have a lot of gray hair yet. It's falling out in certain patterns, but not very good. But I totally understand that you guys, as a culture, as millennials, as just teenagers, are kind of fighting a crisis, right? You look around, and how many of you guys have social media accounts? Okay, so lots of you. I would say rough estimate about 95% of you to 90% of you. Okay. How many of you guys are still using Facebook? Okay, about 70%. Okay. How many of you guys are still using Instagram? Okay, a little more. Okay, this is kind of the trends I kind of assumed were happening. How many of you guys were using Twitter? Yeah, about like the Facebook group, maybe a little less. Right? Yeah, it's a lot of useless information out there, right? Okay, so this one I'm going to expect. I hope you don't shock me. How many of you are using Snapchat? Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say the same percentage of people who are using social media are at least on Snapchat, right? Okay. So I don't have Snapchat. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I kind of check on those. I'm not on Snapchat. So help me understand it. How many of you guys have followers or follow people on Snapchat? Am I saying that right? Friends, okay. Friends? So how many of you guys have more than 50 friends on Snapchat? Definitely? How many of you guys have more than 100 friends on Snapchat? Okay. How many of you guys have more than 200 friends on Snapchat? How many of you guys have more than 300? I'm going to just start saying numbers and keep your hands up if you have more. We have 400. We have more than 400 friends on Snapchat.
Just so you know, you have to go through the cameras.
What's that? What's that? Oh, you have to count them yourself? Okay. So how many of you were scrolling through your friends, you'd have to do like this? Because I get on Facebook, I'm like, oh, hey, my 3 friends are on today. Okay, so Snapchat. So you guys have at least 50 friends on Snapchat, right? Okay. So I'm going to ask you about your connections. How many of you guys talk to or communicate with your friends directly on Snapchat more than once a week? Streaks count. Okay. More than twice a week. More than 3. All of your friends? You have streaks with all your friends? Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, how many of you connect with every single one of your friends every day? All of your friends on Snapchat, you connect with every day. Brock is like all the time, Okay. So now I'm going to ask you, how many of you, if you just broke up with a significant other, how many friends, would you guys call all 50 or 200 or 300 of those friends? How many? 2? 1? Do you guys find that interesting? You guys have hundreds of friends that you're connecting with every day, but you get into a crisis, say your mom has cancer, your dad got in a car wreck. Are you guys going to Snapchat? No. Why?
Because I can't just be on Snapchat and be like, yeah, I'm on
Why?
Because people think you're looking for
Attention? Because Snapchat is mostly for attention? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so hang on, just a second. Follow me, guys. Stay with me. Listen up. I would contest or contend that your connections on Snapchat, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, are counterfeit connections, right? They are not real connections. Okay? But in a moment when somebody likes or responds to whatever you throw out there in the cyber world, you get this small little feeling inside, right? Right? You do, right? You're like, oh, hey, somebody likes me. Right? Okay? Or, hey, they sent one back, right? I don't know what you guys think. Yeah, right? So, instantaneously. So if you send somebody a picture on Snapchat and you don't get one back, right? You're like, what's up, man? It's like not getting a text back, right? It's kind of messed up. So, hey, listen up. I need you to follow with me with this. Listen, guys. This is important because, and this is the basis for everything, okay? Those connections are counterfeit. they instantaneously feel like the real thing, but at the end of the day, and in a crisis, they don't mean anything, right? Like when I don't know if you guys know, but I went through a kind of a rough patch with an infection in my leg. When I was laying in the hospital, and my wife was really freaked out because I was about to go in for my second surgery. I didn't care how many friends I have on Facebook, right? I reached out for my real connections, right? So I want you guys to understand there's all these things out there that are counterfeit. There's counterfeit connections in your lives. There's counterfeit fulfillment, right? There's these short-term gained actions, you know, like throwing your pictures out or throwing statements out on social media that are controversial and getting people fired up and they get all riled up and get them angry, right? Those are counterfeit fulfillment. We feel fulfilled for a moment, but it's very fleeting, right? It's very quick, and poof, it's gone. And now we're looking for the next one. And we're ready for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So this causes us to go back one real quick. Stay there with me, sorry. This causes us to get into habits which can turn into addictions, which cause us feelings of shame, right? Right? So how many of you have found yourselves ever in your lives in a pattern of shameful behaviors? Right? So the same amount of hands that said they don't like the feeling of shame should probably have their hands up right now, right? Because we've all found ourselves in one way or another in a pattern of shameful behaviors, right? I just realized my font isn't quite big enough. I can't read the back screen, so this next slide is important. I'm going to read it off my computer, okay? So go ahead. The shame cycle, okay? And I want you to be listening and thinking about if you've ever felt this cycle in your lives. Okay? So the shame cycle says, I make a mistake or I engage in destructive avoidance behaviors. That's the first action in the shame cycle, right? Okay? The key here is destructive or avoidance behaviors, right? Avoiding real life, avoiding connection, avoiding people. Okay? Step 2 in this cycle is I feel shame, deep guilt, and regret. And I proceed to say verbally abusive things about myself or yourself. Okay? So I say, man, I just couldn't deal with my parents today. I had a terrible day at school. I decided to retreat to my room and I decided to get high. I decided to smoke some pot. Okay? Stop with everybody knows somebody who does that, right? Okay? We're going to talk about some very, maybe hard things to talk about, okay? I wasn't born yesterday, okay? I grew up with a brother who was an addict at 15 years old, so I know that teenagers engage in very destructive behaviors, okay? So then the cycle says, I just engaged in this checkout behavior. I'm no longer high, or I'm separated from that action, and now I feel regret, shame, guilt. And I start saying to myself, man, you are an idiot. You are a mistake. Nobody does this stuff except for you. There is something wrong with you. Okay? I assume everybody is feeling this, right? Everybody understands this cycle. Everybody understands those feelings, because I have. Okay? Step 3 in the cycle is we dwell on the mistake. We feel too depressed to make a plan or have a plan to make amends and correct our mistakes, and we don't learn a darn thing from our mistakes. Right? Because we just keep dwelling on the mistake. We say, man, I did it again, man, I did it again. And here is the cycle part. We decide to cheer ourselves up by engaging in a destructive behavior or avoidance behavior, and we get into addictions or bad habits to forget how we feel. Right? Is anybody familiar with that in your own life? And this can be anything, guys. This can be anything from taking drugs. It can be checking out and just watching YouTube all night instead of doing your homework. It can be, I mean, guys, legitimately, these are not positive behaviors that are destructive to your life, right? But we're all using them for the exact same thing, right? Checking out in the evening, pretending to be doing your homework, but watching YouTube videos all night is the exact same avoidance behavior as somebody that's shooting heroin. It's the same thing. You're both avoiding reality. Both of those people are avoiding responsibility and real connection in their lives. Right? Is everybody following me on that? Can we all agree on that? Okay. So, this is the shame cycle. Okay? The problem with the shame cycle is it's very easy to stay in. Right? Because we kind of are self-medicating with that behavior. We're self-medicating with that disengaging behavior. We're self-medicating with the destructive behavior. And so we kind of feel good about ourselves for a little bit, and then we get separated from the action and behavior. See what I'm saying? Makes sense? Okay. So then we get to feeling like this, right? We don't like the cone of shame, right? How many of you guys have felt like, what was the dog's name? Duh. How many of you guys have felt like that? I don't like the cone of shame, right? We found ourselves trapped in the cone of shame, and all we can do is, I don't like this, right? And we mope about it, right? Okay. So I think this is a good time to go to the next slide. Talk about the difference between shame and guilt. How many of you guys know the difference? Well, I showed you the slides, so now you do. So shame, the difference between shame and guilt, right? Shame says, I am bad, right? That's the voice in our head that starts beating ourselves up, right? And we start talking bad about ourselves. Guilt says, wow, I did something really bad, and I need to make up for it. I did a bad thing, right? So there's a doctor that talks about shame and guilt. She says, to put it another way, punishment in the case of guilt is a judgment on bad behavior. In the case of shame, conversely, the emphasis is on the intrinsic rottenness of the person who committed it. Okay? You guys understand that phrase, the intrinsic rottenness? Right? It means whoever committed that bad behavior is deep inside and will never change and wholly rotten. Okay? How many of you guys have felt that way about yourselves? Right? We all have. This is a very common emotion. Okay? This is one thing I want to get way out in the open here, guys. If you look around, the hands that go up are the hands of your neighbors and yours. Everybody in this room has felt these feelings. Everybody in this room has engaged in these behaviors, including the adults in the back. The cool thing about the adults in the back is we've been doing them all day, right? We have more experience with these behaviors, right, guys? And these feelings. And hopefully most of the adults in the back are here trying to help you walk through this stuff because they've found some answers in their lives to help them deal with these behaviors and feelings, okay? So, I want everybody here to understand, and this is one of the ground rules of the next 4 weeks, there is no judgment here, right? Because we've all engaged in the behaviors, we've all felt the same feelings, okay? Is that okay? Everybody can agree on that? Raise your hand if we can agree that we've all we participated in the behaviors, and we've all felt the feelings. Okay, perfect. That's everybody in the room, okay? So shame versus guilt. And then, next slide, please. This is how we feel with shame, right? This is where we're going. Okay? This is actually a picture of me when I was a child running from a moth. So this is how I feel about it. So,
Just kidding, right?
So that is the psychological background of where we're going and where we've been. Next slide, please. Now I want to introduce you to some hope, okay? Because that's pretty heavy stuff, right? Everybody's now like, yes, I'm a horrible person, right? But you're not, okay? Because there's some serious hope here. And I want to walk you through this hope, okay? And I want to introduce you to a guy. His name originally was Simon. How many of you guys know who Simon is, adults excluded? A few of you, okay? I think all of the Twitter users know who Simon is. Like all 5 of you. Sorry. What's that? How many of you guys know who Peter is or have heard of Peter? Okay? So introduction to Peter. Peter is Simon. Okay? Peter's true name and given name was Simon. Okay? Jesus, when you met him, changed his name. So we're going to be introduced to Simon or Simon Peter real quick. Okay? John chapter 2. How many of you guys own a Bible? Okay? How many of you guys have ever thought about bringing a Bible to youth group? Okay, so if you guys will please, for the next, at least for the next 3 weeks, and starting next week, bring your Bibles. We're going to be doing some digging into the Bible, so go ahead and bring it. And then you guys can follow along in your own Bibles, okay? So let's go to, if you have it on your phone, you can follow me there. Luke chapter 5. Okay, Luke chapter 5. We're introduced to Simon. One day Jesus was preaching on the shore of Galilee. Great crowds pressed in on him to listen to the word of God. He noticed 2 empty boats on the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat on the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, okay, so he's talking to Simon directly, right? He was preaching, the bank was crowded, nobody could see him, so he slid off into a boat, got a little further away, like I am from you, right? And he started talking to him from the water. He said, now Simon, go out where it's deeper and let your nets, cast down your nets to catch some fish. Master, Simon replied, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. How many of you guys have ever been fishing and never caught a thing? Good. Everybody's being honest, right? That is a horrible feeling, right? How many of you guys are like, oh, one last cast. Okay, we all done it, right? Okay, it's a horrible feeling. Okay, so that's basically what happened to Simon last night, the night before. He had worked all night long and they were casting. Okay, but they were net fishing, right? So they had to throw these huge nets out, and then every time they'd have to pull them up. It was a lot of work, right? You imagine doing that over and over all night long. Nothing. Okay? And then this Jesus guy gets done preaching and says, hey, let's go out deeper and let's try to catch some fish. Sounds like, Jesus, literally we did that all night and didn't catch a thing. But Simon is excited because he's just heard Jesus talk and he hears something in his message. He says, but if you tell me to, I'll go ahead and do it. At this time, their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. A shout for help brought the partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish on the verge of sinking. Okay, so Jesus says, hey, let's try it. Simon's like, all right, you're crazy. We tried it all night. And now they have so many fish that it's about to sink 2 boats. When Simon Peter realized Jesus and said, oh Lord, please leave me. I am such a sinful man. So Simon instantaneously realizes that this Jesus who has this awesome message and says these amazing words is holy because he's just done a miracle in Simon's boat in his presence. And he's like, leave me, I'm not worthy. For he was awestruck by the number of fish they had caught and where the others lived in. His partner James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. Jesus replied, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people." And as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. Okay, so this is our introduction to Simon or Peter. In other texts,
Jesus called him and said, "I'm no longer going to call you Simon. I'm going to change your name to Peter." You got to know what Hebrew and Peter means. Peter means not wrong. That was a statement. Okay?
the cool-headed one, the one I'm going to lean everything on, right? My foundation. Okay? But think about this, okay? So Peter grows up with his father and his brother, and they're fishermen. Okay? We all know a farmer, right? Okay? Can you imagine if your dad or your friend's dad was out there with your friend or you, and some guy just came along, and all of a sudden corn popped out of the ground and was already in the truck, the trailer to head to the co-op, and you or your friend was like, "Dad, peace out, I'm following this guy to this crazy miracle, because that's cool." That's basically what Peter did, right? Peter ditched the family business. He was like, "This Jesus guy just did a miracle, I'm out of here. Sorry, Dad, you're on your own." He left the family business in a heartbeat, because Jesus said, "I'm going to make you a fisher of men." Okay? This is our introduction to Peter. So who was Peter? This is just our introduction. I want to run down a list of things
That the Bible tells us and the apostles and the Gospels tells us about Peter.
Jesus walked away from the family business. Jesus was the first disciple that is documented to testify that Jesus was actually the Messiah. Peter actually pulled Jesus aside from the larger group of disciples and told him to stop talking the way he was. And he rebuked him in public. He walked on the water with Jesus. He was the only disciple to jump out of the boat when Jesus was walking on the water. I want to read that story to you guys real quick. I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to flip through that. How many of you guys are familiar with that story? Jesus walking on the water, right? Waves are going crazy. They see Jesus, and Peter's like, "Jesus, if that's you, tell me to come to you." And Jesus is like, "Yeah, it's me." He's like, "Woo!" and jumps out of the water and starts walking on the water with Jesus. And then he realizes, "Holy cow, I'm walking in the water." And he starts sinking. Right? This is the Peter we're talking about. Peter refused to let Jesus wash his feet in the night of the Last Supper. He said, "I'm not worthy. You can't wash my feet." And Jesus said, "If I don't wash your feet, you can't come to heaven with me." He said, "Well, in that case, wash my whole body. Give me that." Right? So Peter is a very, very passionate, but very, very fickle person. He's on both sides of the aisle of Jesus his whole life. He confessed that he would stand with Jesus until the end. Jesus conversely said, "Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times that you even know who I am before the night is over." He fell asleep with Jesus while Jesus was praying. Jesus went into the Garden of Gethsemane, and Peter was one of the disciples that couldn't stay awake when Jesus 3 times asked him to stay awake and pray with him. And Peter fell asleep. You guys pray for your friends up here a lot? Can you imagine? You're up here with your friends and they're going through something really, really tough, and you just fell asleep. And your friend gets up from the prayer and is like, "Okay, I guess I'm that important to you, right? You just fell asleep while you were praying for me?" It's kind of crazy to comprehend, right? This is Peter. This is who Peter is. Peter, right as Jesus was getting arrested, Peter pulls his sword. For some reason, Peter has a sword with him, which is kind of cool because he thought that they were going to take over the Roman Empire. He was ready to fight. As Jesus was getting arrested, Peter pulls his sword out and he cuts off the ear of one of the guards. This is where Peter was going. Peter was ready for revolution. And then hours later, Peter denied that he even knew who Jesus was 3 times on 3 separate occasions. This is literally hours later, hours after he was ready for revolution. He was ready to die in a battle. It takes just a couple of hours, and he tells 3 separate people, "You've got the wrong guy. I've never seen him before in my life. I don't know him. He just spent the last 3 years of his life with him." So, Peter has some very, very cool things about him, right? He was the first to do some really crazy things for Jesus, but he also has some very, very shameful actions in his life, right? Okay? And he even fulfilled one of the prophecies about himself that Jesus spoke to him. Jesus said, "You will deny me." He was like, "Yeah, I don't think so." Sure enough, that happened. You can't get much more shameful or a shameful action than that, right? Can you imagine? Just picture for a moment that feeling of shame. How heavy that feeling of shame would be. I just denied that I even knew who Christ was. I really hope you won. Okay, so I'm denying that I even know who Christ is. Hours later, he's crucified. He's dead. In the last moments of his life, I have completely betrayed him. How many of you guys have committed an act that shameful? I don't think so, man. That's like seriously, like this is so shameful of an act. And none of us in this room have committed that shameful of an act. We may have felt that kind of shame, but we've not done anything on that level. To our friends, to our parents, to our pastors. That is crazy. In that society, it is crazy. Okay? Now, the reason I chose Peter to walk us through this, because we're going to see how Jesus treats Peter, even in his shameful moments. And I believe that we can extract the heart of Jesus out of the story of Peter and apply it to our lives. Right? How many of you guys would be excited if I said, "Hey, there are some tools to help you curb the amount of shame in your lives"? If I could give you tools and we could use some tangible actions to reduce the amount of shame in our lives, how many of you guys would be excited or willing to accept those? Okay? Some of you, I hope most of you. Those of you who don't have your hands up, I hope you're just asleep. Or looking at your phones. Okay, so until next time, go ahead to the next slide. These are the tools I want to give you. Okay? I want you to take these things seriously, though. Okay? I want you to read about the life of Peter. Okay? You can find passages about Peter in all 4 of the Gospels. Okay? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay? If you can, in the next week, read one story about Peter. Okay? Just read a little bit about Peter. Get introduced to Peter. He's a pretty cool guy, especially as we're going to learn about what he does towards the end of his life. Okay? And I want you to understand in the next week, I want you to understand and start looking for and recognizing that shame cycle we talked about. Right? I don't want you to necessarily try to do anything about it. I just want you to be able to be conscious of it. Okay? I just want you to be like, you know what? I'm kind of in this shame cycle right now. Okay? I'm in this shame cycle again. I'm in this shame cycle again. I want you to be able to recognize it. Because it's when we can recognize our emotions and our feelings is when we can start to use tools to break that cycle, right? And I want you to reflect on where you need to improve. Okay? Just reflect on it. Once you feel yourself in that cycle, once you feel yourself committing shameful acts, just reflect on, man, I need to change something here, right? This part of my life isn't where I want it to be. Okay? How many of you guys can do that? How many of you guys can do those three things? Okay? And the last thing is probably the most important tool, okay? Is this is the key to everything. I need you to understand, at least cognitively, that Jesus has called each and every single one of you to be his disciple, just like he called Peter. Jesus wants you to walk with him and follow him and learn from him every single day. Okay? Jesus called Peter as a dirty, know-nothing, super overexcited fisherman, right? Jesus called Peter where he was, not where he was going, right? And it's through the relationship with Jesus that Peter became who he was and as a core of the church, right? Okay? So you have to understand cognitively that Jesus has called each and every one of you, okay? All right, so think about those 4 things for the next week. Any questions?